All right, let's jump right in. Today we're diving deep into, well, this whole world of conspiracy theories, conspiracy culture, and especially here in America.
Yeah.
And I mean, it feels like with the 2024 election coming up,
Oh,
it's
Reed.
it's just everywhere.
It's so timely, and what's really interesting to me is how it's not just like a fringe thing anymore.
Right.
You know, it's really like infiltrating the mainstream and how it's shaping, conversations and even political decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what's so fascinating. And the article "Feeling Good and Happy Through Smoke and Mirrors Beyond the Conspiracy Culture,"
Right.
they use this Alice in Wonderland
Yeah.
analogy. Like stepping through the looking glass into this kind of distorted
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
It feels so apt.
It really does. It's a powerful image. And and I think the article highlights just how widespread this has become.
Yeah.
I mean, did you know that something like 61% of Americans still believe that JFK's assassination was a conspiracy, and 28% believe that the government is hiding information about aliens?
That's a lot of people. So is this just like a fascination with the unknown? Or is there like a deeper distrust in institutions at play here?
Well, I think it's a really complicated issue, right? And the article reminds us that these conspiracy theories aren't exactly new to America.
Right.
You think back to, fears surrounding the Bavarian Illuminati
Oh, yeah.
back in the 18th century. They were seen as this shadowy group, pulling the strings behind the scenes, kind of like the deep state conspiracies that we see today.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So this fear of hidden agendas, like powerful forces operating in the shadows,
Hmm.
has kind of been a recurring theme throughout American history.
Precisely, and these anxieties often kind of surface during times of social upheaval or uncertainty.
Right.
The Salem witch trials, for example,
Oh, wow.
stem from a similar place of fear and paranoia.
That's so interesting. And speaking of these historical events, the article points to JFK's assassination as this like major turning point.
Hmm.
It seems like that really solidified for a lot of Americans a distrust in the government.
It was such a pivotal moment because, the official findings from the Warren Commission, they were met with a lot of skepticism,
Mm.
right? And then a lot of these alternative theories emerged, and they persist to this day. It's like this event really sowed the seeds of doubt, like a sense that those in power, maybe they're not always being transparent
Right.
or truthful.
Yeah, and I feel like that distrust has only been like amplified in the digital age, right?
Hmm.
With the internet and social media. I mean, it's just become like a breeding ground for these conspiracy theories.
Yes, absolutely. And the way information spreads online, particularly on social media, it's created these echo chambers. People are constantly exposed to information that just confirms what they already believe.
Right.
And regardless of whether it's actually true or not.
Yeah. It's like everyone's retreating into their own little information bubbles. It
Exactly.
makes it like impossible to have like productive conversations because you're starting from such different sets of like facts.
And the article highlights the role of algorithms
Yeah.
in this. These platforms that are designed to keep users engaged, and, this sensational content, it just spreads faster.
Yeah. Mhm.
Conspiracy theories, they often get more attention than like straight factual information.
Right, right. So it's like you have this historical undercurrent of distrust,
Yeah.
and then you add the internet, you add social media, these echo chambers, the amplification of misinformation, and then you throw in political polarization,
It's
right?
absolutely. I mean, America feels more divided than ever.
Yeah.
And it just seems like conspiracy theories, they're just thriving in this environment.
I mean, the article, it states that 79% of Americans believe that the country is more divided than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
And this division, it creates this kind of us versus them mentality.
So anything that contradicts your worldview,
Yeah.
it's just automatically dismissed.
Yeah.
It's propaganda, it's fake news.
Yeah. Yeah. And this brings us to like some specific examples, right, of how conspiracy theories have kind of entered the mainstream. We've all heard of QAnon, Pizzagate. Can you give us some context on like just how influential these movements have become?
We'll take Pizzagate, for instance.
Okay.
It started with this unfounded online rumor. It claimed that this pizza place in D.C. was a front for a child sex trafficking ring
What?
involving prominent Democrats.
Oh, wow.
And despite there being absolutely no evidence, this story It just spread like wildfire
Right.
on social media, and it ultimately led to a man actually firing an assault rifle inside the restaurant.
Oh my gosh.
It's a chilling example of how these online conspiracies, they can manifest in real-world violence.
Absolutely. And then there's QAnon, which just seems to have like permeated various aspects of American society. Can you explain like what makes this movement so unique?
I mean, QAnon, it's this expansive and convoluted theory.
Right.
It posits that there's this secret battle going on between President Trump and this deep state cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles.
Wow.
And they control the government, the media, Hollywood.
It sounds almost unbelievable.
Right.
But it's gained such a following, and it's even like influenced political campaigns and things like that.
And that's the thing about QAnon. It's so striking, is its ability to like absorb and incorporate these other conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And it creates this vast interconnected web of belief.
Yeah, I see.
And it's incredibly hard to debunk
Right.
because
Yeah.
if one part of it is disproven,
Right.
they could just shift to another aspect of the thing.
Right, right. It's like we're falling down the rabbit hole here,
Yep.
just like the article suggested. But before we go any further, I want to bring it back to you, our listener. What are your initial reactions to all of this? What stands out to you so far? Do you see any connections to your own experiences or observations?
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Yeah, it's fascinating how these theories really tap into those like pre-existing anxieties and fears, right?
Oh, right.
And it gives people a sense of like order
Yeah.
and control
Mm.
in a world that can feel like increasingly chaotic,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and the article touches on that, how these like rapid social and technological changes,
Yeah.
economic inequality, political polarization, it creates this breeding ground for these kinds of narratives. Like they're looking for explanations. They're
Yes.
looking for someone or something to blame
Right,
for
absolutely.
the challenges that they're facing.
And conspiracy theories, they offer like these simple answers
Right.
to these really complex problems.
Yeah.
And often they're assigning blame to, a specific group or individual. So again, creating that us versus them dynamic.
Yeah, yeah. The article also mentions how this like sense of knowing something that others don't can be really appealing.
Oh, yeah.
It's like having the secret knowledge, which can be very empowering, especially like when you're feeling powerless or marginalized.
And this sense of belonging
Right.
to like the select group of being in the know.
Right, right.
It creates these really strong social bonds, and it just reinforces those beliefs even further.
Yeah, it becomes more than just like a theory at that point. It's
Yes,
like
look at it.
it's part of your identity and your community.
Exactly.
And this brings us to the 2020 election
Yeah.
and its aftermath. The Stop the Steal movement.
Right.
I mean, that's a prime example of how deeply these conspiracy theories can impact our political system.
Yeah. The belief that the election was stolen from Donald Trump, despite, mountains of evidence to the contrary.
It's become a central tenet
Yeah.
for a significant portion of the population.
Yeah. The article says 60% of Republicans believe the election was stolen.
Yeah.
What are the implications of that level of distrust in the democratic process?
It's really worrying because when people lose faith in the integrity of elections, it undermines, the very foundation of a functioning democracy.
Right.
It can lead to voter apathy,
Right.
political instability, and even violence, as we saw, with the January 6th insurrection.
Right. Right. And speaking of like the global perspective,
Yeah.
it's interesting to note that, America's conspiracy culture, other countries are watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some view it with concern. Like it's a cautionary tale of what can happen when misinformation just runs rampant.
Yeah. And many countries are taking proactive steps
Right.
to combat this misinformation,
Yeah.
particularly during elections.
They've implemented these stricter regulations on social media platforms, fact-checking initiatives, even educational campaigns
Interesting.
to promote media literacy.
It makes you wonder if America needs to consider like similar strategies.
Yeah.
But shifting gears a bit, let's bring this back to you, our listener. How can we as individuals like navigate this information landscape where, reality itself seems up for debate?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
I mean, the article It really stresses the importance of critical thinking
Right.
and media literacy now more than ever.
And they suggest a pinch of salt approach, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, just don't accept everything you read or hear.
At face value.
At face value.
Sure.
Question your sources. Consider multiple perspectives.
Right.
And be willing to change your mind when presented with new evidence.
And be aware of your own biases, because we all have them.
Right.
And those biases, they influence how we interpret information.
It's like that saying, like, don't believe everything you think.
Exactly.
We need to be willing to challenge our own assumptions and be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to seek out like diverse viewpoints.
Yeah.
Engage with people who hold different perspectives.
Yeah.
Not with the goal of changing their minds, but with the goal of understanding where they're coming from.
Right, right. And you might learn something new, or at the very least, you'll gain a deeper understanding of the issue at hand.
Right.
I mean, it's so easy to get stuck in our own echo chambers, right?
Yeah.
Surrounded by people who just agree with us. But stepping outside of that comfort zone, engaging with different perspectives, it can be really enriching.
It really can. And if you come across something online that seems, too sensational to be true,
Right.
it probably is.
Right.
Take the time to verify that information before you share it.
Yeah.
A simple Google search. It can debunk a false claim in seconds.
That's so important. We all have a responsibility
Right.
to stop the spread of misinformation.
Absolutely.
We need to be like critical consumers
Right.
of information, not just like passive recipients.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to be skeptical.
Yeah.
It's healthy to question things
Right.
and to demand evidence. But there's a difference between like healthy skepticism
Right.
and blindly accepting any conspiracy theory
Right.
that just confirms your biases.
Right, right. So to summarize, we've explored, the historical context of these conspiracy theories, the role of the internet and social media in amplifying them,
Right.
and the impact of political polarization. We've also discussed how other countries are addressing this misinformation and what we as individuals can do to navigate this really complex information landscape.
And there's one final point I want to touch on from the article
Okay.
before we wrap up.
I'm all ears.
The article, it argues that this culture of distrust and misinformation, it has serious consequences,
Yeah.
not just for our political system,
Right.
but for society as a whole.
Right.
It erodes our shared reality,
Yeah.
making it really difficult to have like productive conversations
Yeah.
and to find common ground.
That's a really powerful point, because when we can't even agree on like basic facts,
Right.
it becomes almost impossible
Yeah.
to address like these complex issues facing, our country and the world.
Imagine trying to solve climate change
Right.
when a big chunk of the population believes it's a hoax,
Right.
or trying to implement, public health measures during a pandemic
Right.
when people distrust scientists and government institutions.
It's almost like we're living in these parallel universes,
Yeah.
each with its own version of the truth. And that disconnect has like very real consequences for our ability to like function as a society. And it makes you wonder, the article even suggests that maybe this division is intentional, like this divide and conquer strategy.
Oh, yeah. It's a cynical view,
Right.
but it's not totally unfounded. I mean, throughout history, those in power have often used fear
Right.
and division to maintain control.
Yeah, when people are afraid and
Yeah.
suspicious of each other, they're less likely to like challenge authority. So what can we do about this? How do we break free from this cycle of distrust and division?
It's tough. The article doesn't it doesn't offer any easy answers, but it does really emphasize the importance of individual responsibility.
Okay.
We need to be more discerning consumers of information,
Right.
more willing to engage in respectful dialogue, more committed to seeking the truth, even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it sounds like a call to action almost,
Yeah.
like a challenge for each of us to become like more informed, more engaged, more compassionate citizen.
Exactly. And the author, Dr. Marina Nani, she reminds us
Yeah,
to recognize the genius or stardust in each individual,
I like that.
And she argues that when we fail to acknowledge each other's talents
Mm-hmm.
and contributions, we all lose out.
That's a beautiful sentiment. It reminds us that like behind every strongly held belief, there's a human being
Right.
with their own unique experiences and perspectives. And maybe if we can start seeing each other as individuals rather than just like representatives
Yeah.
of opposing ideologies,
Right.
we can start to like bridge those
It's
divides.
about, recognizing our shared humanity, even in the midst of disagreement. It's
Yeah.
about listening with empathy,
Right.
seeking understanding, and finding common ground.
And this brings us back to that closing question from the article, what will come next? It does feel like we're at a crossroads.
Absolutely.
Like the choices we make now, individually and collectively, they're going to determine the path we take.
Yeah.
Do we succumb to fear and division,
Yeah.
allowing, these conspiracy theories and misinformation to further erode our social fabric? Or do we choose to build bridges, foster understanding, and reclaim a shared sense of reality?
It's a big challenge,
It is.
but I think we're up to it.
Yeah. And you, our listener, you're a crucial part of this effort.
Remember, change starts with each of us.
Mm-hmm.
By embracing critical thinking,
Yeah.
seeking diverse perspectives, and engaging in respectful dialogue, we can create a more informed
Right.
and less polarized society.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into conspiracy culture in America, I encourage you to continue exploring these issues, to challenge your own assumptions, and to engage in those conversations that matter.
The future of truth and democracy depends on it.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.